Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am really happy to welcome you to this session today. There are people still joining. We had a large group of members of EvalForward and other experts and practitioners who joined, registered for this webinar today. So I'm very happy to welcome you. My name is Renata Mirulla. I am the facilitator of EvalForward, a community of practice on agriculture, food security, and rural development, of course, evaluation. And I'm supporting this session today with Nicola Teunisian from the Office of Evaluation of the World Food Programme. It is my pleasure to introduce you to becoming an evaluation professional, tips and tricks for the journey. This session is part of the EvalForward Talks sessions, which are informal webinars where we share good practices, tips and challenges around evaluation. But unlike other sessions, given the great success of people registering for the session today, we decided to record it. And we will also have a blog after the session, capturing the main messages and outcomes of the event. So just wanted to invite you to use the chat to comment, to share your comments and questions during this. We will have time at the end, not at the end, we will have some time at least to discuss what the emerging evaluators will share with us today. So we hope this session will give you really first-hand insights on the experience of being an emerging evaluator. And I want now to hand over to an emerging evaluator, Anna Erika Lareza, who will facilitate this session today. Anna Erika, she's, as I said, also a young and emerging evaluator with a lot of experience already. She works as a M&E specialist at Workland M&E Institute. She's specifically focusing on evaluation in agriculture, disaster risk management and environment. And she's serving as a board member of the APEA, the Asia Pacific Evaluation Association. She's president of the Philippines Evaluators for Development, and she's also a founder and a co-lead of Eval Youth Asia and the Asia Pacific Communication Hub. So I'm very happy to hand over to Anna Erika to facilitate this session. Thanks all. Over to you, Erika.
Thank you very much. Hello, can you hear me? Can you confirm? Great. Thank you very much, Renata. Thank you very much, Nicola, for having me. And I'm very happy to actually join everyone in this session. I'm really excited. Any webinar or any session for young and emerging evaluators, you bet that I'm excited for it. So I'm really looking forward for this session. So for the sake of our audience, I'm just going to introduce what are we actually looking forward to. So we're going to talk essentially about the Emerging Evaluator Program of the World Food Programme. What is it all about? What are the roles of the academic institutions in these emerging evaluator programs? And what role did they play in the emerging evaluator program of the World Food Programme? And then we also have a panel of emerging evaluators joining us live to share their experiences. So it's all about their journey, when did they hear about the M&E, and what are like the skills that they have to develop, and what are their learnings in this journey as they go through the Emerging Evaluator Program. Also, of course, with this session, we very much would definitely like to hear more from our audience. So we want to hear from you, everyone who's joining us. So if you have any questions or comments throughout our discussion, feel free to share them in the chat, and we would be monitoring it. And later on, when we have our Q&A session, we would be asking them all throughout our panelists. So yeah, I'm really excited for this one. Let's get it started. So first up, next slide. Okay, so first up we have Mayang Manyoba. She is the World Food Programme's Regional Bureau, Johannesburg's Acting Regional Evaluation Officer, responsible for ensuring that it provides substantive support to all of the country offices in commissioning and managing credible and useful decentralized evaluation. So she's going to talk about the Emerging Evaluator Program of the WFP. So without further ado, Mayibongwe, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Erica. So just to get us started, I'll just give you a brief background of the Emerging Evaluator Program, which was launched in June 2021 during the Global Evaluation Week. So together with UNICEF South Africa, the South African Monitoring and Evaluation Association, the Wits University, and CLEAR AA, which is a Center for Learning and Evaluation and Results, and WFP Regional Bureau, Johannesburg, we embarked on a journey to support and develop the technical evaluation skills for emerging evaluators through exposure to real-life evaluations. I must say we had a number of interesting conversations around what it means to be an emerging evaluator vis-a-vis what it means to be a young and emerging evaluator. Finally, we came to the realization that points of entry into the evaluation profession are not necessarily limited to the young. That said, we acknowledged various individuals transitioning from other careers, be it research, education, law, sociology, etc. So for the program to be inclusive, we opted for the Emerging Evaluator title. So during that co-creation process, a number of pathways were identified, which included work immersion, project-based workplace exposure, job shadowing and mentorship, as well as creating spaces for collaborative sharing and learning. And one of the key objectives of that partnership was to build the capacities of the emerging evaluators through workplace exposure. So thereafter, WFP and CLEAR AA then brought the work immersion aspect of the program to life. We recruited 6 emerging evaluators through a highly collaborative and supported process which involved all our partners. After approximately 80 applications, we eventually came down to the 6 emerging evaluators. Important to mention that the regional evaluation footprint covers 12 countries. So our core mandate is to ensure support to the country offices in commissioning and managing of decentralized evaluations. So looking at that path undertaken from planning for evaluations to the dissemination of evaluation evidence, the emerging evaluators have been immersed into the core processes, engaging with not only evaluation products, but also supporting the regional evaluation unit to ensure the production of credible, quality, and useful evaluations in the region. That said, for WFP, the first 6 months we really focused on country office support and ensuring quality of evaluation products. And now we have refocused and are prioritizing evidence analysis and use and the analysis of available data to support evaluation processes. We are 7 months into the work immersion program with a trail of lessons and reflections from both WFP and CLEAR AA. And I'm personally extremely excited to be part of the session today as we really get to hear from the emerging evaluators, their journey to date, lessons and reflections. So thank you so much. Excited to be here. Over to you, Erica.
Thank you for your words, Mayibongwe. And up next, we have Takunda Sherau, Deputy Director at CLEAR AA. He is leading and managing the country program for the center, ensuring progressive scaling up of implementation across Anglophone African countries as part of the center's regionalization strategy. He's joining us today to actually talk about the strategic role of the academic centers like CLEAR AA in promoting M&E globally, and what are the emerging evaluators do or busy with at the CLEAR. Taku, please take the floor.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll just speak to the work that the emerging evaluators are doing at CLEAR AA. And as some of you might have read on our website, our center is configured into programmatic areas or business line or business lines. So that means that in strengthening monitoring and evaluation systems, we specifically look at different elements of the M&E systems or evaluation systems. And having said that, the EEs that we are hosting at Clear AA are divided into these business lines. For example, you find out that there are those in the research and learning business line. Their mandate is to codify or write articles in terms of best practices or good practices that are emanating from the work that we are doing across English-speaking countries. They are also part of the people who do quality assurance for our knowledge products, be it blogs, be it peer-reviewed journal articles, learning notes, and so forth. Then we also have another business line called capacity strengthening. And this business line is mandated to conduct training, to establish curriculum for monitoring and evaluation, and offer that curriculum to different institutions, be it government, be it non-governmental institutions. And also they conduct what we call individual M&E assessments to understand the competencies that the people who are working in M&E departments in government and other non-governmental organizations have, and what are the desired competencies, and produce a curriculum or domesticate curriculum geared to improve those skills. Then we've got what we call strengthening legislatures, which also host an EE, and they work with the parliamentarians and the parliamentary staff to help them grapple with M&E processes as well as evidence utilization, be it for oversight, be it for representation, budgeting, and decision-making. And lastly, there is evaluation systems, business line or programmatic area, which is responsible for strengthening or creating an enabling environment for monitoring and evaluation to happen within the government institutions that the center works with. For instance, establishing M&E policies, like what we have done in Lesotho and Namibia, they were involved, establishment of evaluation guidelines, and also facilitation of co-creation workshops to produce these outputs of evaluation guidelines and evaluation policies. In terms of the role of universities in EE programs, we see that universities, they play quite a critical role in offering monitoring and evaluation courses. And I think across our region and over the world, they have really come to understand the demand that is there in terms of monitoring and evaluation courses. So their role is to build a capacity of emerging evaluators so that they have a good foundation theoretically through academic programs. So in essence, these programs, they prepare them for practice in either government or non-governmental institutions where they will go and practice their M&E. And then the provision of training is in line with the required skills. So the universities are able to scan the market, what sort of skills are required for monitoring and evaluation, what are the competencies required for one to be a good evaluator. And based on that, the curriculum is therefore geared towards addressing that. And just competence that has been established either by M&E associations or even centers that are in M&E fraternity. So universities should inform the practice through development of theories that are applicable for different contexts and support the continued development of M&E profession, as the M&E profession and discipline is still emerging. We really need universities to make sure that their curriculum is at par with the needs of the market. And of course, those M&E or emerging evaluators that are from the universities, after being mentored through these internships or EE programs, they should be able also to give back to the universities in terms of translating the practice that they would have gained through internships in different host organizations. So these are just key points that I thought maybe I should highlight. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Taku. And indeed, for instances, and I believe it's true for any region, to be honest, in comes to developing the skills of emerging evaluators, definitely academic institutions play a critical role. And I hope for every region as well, including mine, that aspect or that sector would be stepping up. Okay, so we actually have reached an exciting 100 participants right now in this room. And I'm seeing familiar names, and I know you know each other, but because this is a webinar for young and emerging evaluators, we would like to know who among our participants consider themselves as an emerging evaluator. So we are now gonna have a very quick poll, asking our audience, are you or do you consider yourself an emerging evaluator? So Nicola, could you please bring up the poll? While waiting for the poll, I would just also like to remind everyone to please keep themselves muted at all times. So it would just gonna be very helpful for the rest of our audience to hear our dear speakers and listen to their points. Okay. Poll 1. Do you consider yourself an emerging evaluator? It's up now, so please share your answers. Mm-hmm. Okay. So again, if you haven't, if you are just joining because people are still coming in, we are currently doing a poll. If you consider yourself an emerging, do you consider yourself an emerging evaluator? So we would like to know. So that would help us as well to tailor our conversations and discussions for our audience. So I think, do we have already 100%? Okay. So right now we have 71% of our audience who consider themselves an emerging evaluator. 17% says no. Maybe that's because maybe you're here to support emerging evaluators. If you are, thank you very much for joining. And if you are unclear about the definition, it's fine. We're gonna talk about that later on as well. If it's something that you want to clarify, we will define that for you. Okay, so thank you again for joining. So, and with that, we are gonna move with our next discussion. So now we are having our panel with emerging evaluators. So joining us today is Samukeli Siwe. Her journey here. She have a unique pathway, so I'm looking forward to hearing from that. Next is Stefan Paulsen, who's going to be sharing what's his thoughts when he first heard the phrase monitoring and evaluation. And next is not to be confused with Mayibongwe of World Food Programme. We have Mayibongwe Nube, an emerging evaluator who's going to share about balancing soft and hard skills and what he has learned so far. So with that, I'm just going to call our first speaker, Samu. Feel free to take the floor and share your journey with us.
Samu, you have to unmute.
So sorry. I'm Sangelis Mkize. When I began my journey in monitoring and evaluation, I had completed my master's in policy and development studies at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. And thereafter, I joined an NGO. I approached an NGO. I wanted to start working in monitoring and evaluation, and I thought an NGO would be the perfect place for me to start working, especially an NGO that worked specifically in climate change adaptation and in the agricultural space. I knew from that point that I wanted to work more in sectorial work, wanted to focus on a specific sector in my M&E journey. And I think one of the most important things that I initially learned when I got into the work in the sector is the importance of understanding the sector as an M&E person. As we know, as M&E, we can engage and work in many different sectors. But the first thing that was important for me was engaging sectorial specialists and researchers, participating in sectorial webinars and conferences at different levels, whether was it local conferences or webinars or provincial, national, as well as international conferences. I engaged both smallholder and commercial farmers in my work. I spoke to suppliers, distributors, and collaborated with universities in any research projects that my organization was engaging with. Research institutes, governments at different levels, and well as other NGOs working with our beneficiaries. At that point, I had gained my confidence in understanding the sector. From that point, I started presenting also my work and my ideas in conferences. One particular conference was at the University of Pretoria at the Virtual Irrigation Conference. I spoke there about learning with smallholder farmers using participatory processes in evaluation and as well as monitoring. And I think at that point, I realized also the limitations since we're working in a small organization, but that had a large reach. We didn't have an evaluation specialist that we were working with. So I wanted to know more about monitoring and evaluation. I then branched into public sector M&E, where I worked at the Department of Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs. There, I learned the importance of evidence and evidence use to inform planning, to inform implementation of programs, improving them, budgeting, and decision-making in general. And also there, I gained more experience in performance information, monitoring, as well as evaluation. But I also there understood the lack of capacity in institution for conducting evaluation, that's also managing evaluations. And so I joined the VOP, the SAMEA, South African Monitoring and Evaluation Association, to engage with experienced evaluators, mid-professional career professionals, as well as emerging evaluators, speaking about evaluation, presenting ideas on evaluation, as well as other new approaches and innovations within the monitoring and evaluation space. When I joined SAMEA, I was then also introduced to capacity building workshops. I joined those capacity building workshops to learn more about topical areas within the monitoring and evaluation space. And as well as the competency framework, which Taku spoke about, is so important in monitoring and evaluation. I did a self-assessment to understand the capacities that I have, the skills, but also where I lacked within my career or my trajectory so far. So when I did that, I realized that actually I also wanted to engage in a program that was tailor-made to actually help me to grow in these areas where I hadn't grown, and also engage in the M&E space in so many areas, because M&E is so broad. As Taku also mentioned, there's legislatures, evaluation systems, there's management of evaluation that we engaged in at WFP. And so I really wanted to gain more experience, and I joined the local event where the Emerging Evaluators Programme was being introduced, and I signed up for the program thereafter. And then I joined the program. Luckily, I was chosen as one of the emerging evaluators to join the program, and I'm happy to be part of the program to learn more from experienced evaluators, to learn with emerging evaluators, and to grow in the profession itself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samu, for sharing your experience. And then, so next up, we have Stefan Paulsen, who's going to share his experience or thoughts when he first heard the phrase M&E. Go ahead, my friend.
Thank you, Anna. I hope I'm audible, and good afternoon to our participants and colleagues. I just first want to acknowledge my other EE colleagues, Isabel, Yokai, and Connie. for the nomination. So I hope I can do them justice on this. And I think initially a point of departure is there's always this question around who is an evaluator, or what is monitoring and evaluation. And I think I found in my own experience that in our own capacities, we all are to a certain extent evaluators. Because I made an example yesterday, from the moment we wake up, we already engaging in monitoring and evaluation. For example, looking at the weather. When we look outside at the sky, we can see this movement of clouds, and that will give us an indication of what will happen during the day. Will it rain? Will it still be sunny? Is it windy outside? And through those indicators and viewing our environment, we then make informed decisions about what to do next. And I think monitoring and evaluation is more focused on being intentional about what outcomes you're seeking, or what outcomes you want to see as a result of your activities. And just to give a short background, so my journey is slightly a bit different, because I started at the grassroots level, or grassroots approach. And after my graduation, I volunteered with UNICEF South Africa, where I founded the UNICEF UWC branch. And during this phase and time of understanding where my passion really lies, we developed two kind of small scale programs. One was a winter drive program with a children's home in Khayelitsha. So that was one of it. And another was UWC application support for high school children. And I think naturally the assumption was that if you're doing good, it will naturally lead to greater impact. And I think that's where I kind of formulated my close experience to monitoring and evaluation by asking the question, but how do we know it's working? Yes, we are getting the donations. Yes, we are getting in-kind gifts. Yes, we are going to the schools, but how do we know that our activities is actually making an impact, that it's actually changing lives, that it's actually supporting development? And that curiosity kind of translated into me landing an internship in at Southern Hemisphere, which is a consultancy based in Cape Town. And that's where I first became aware of this term monitoring and evaluation. And initially it was very foreign to me, because I initially thought it's just observing something, asking a question, there you go, you have the answer, move along. But after a while, I understood that there's various components to monitoring and evaluation, and I became a bit more curious about, I still recall the first time I saw a logical framework approach and a theory of change. I was taken away by it, because I was like, okay, this is quite interesting. I don't understand it, and I want to understand it. So how do I understand it, right? So that's where I developed my understanding, or my fundamental understanding, the theory of change, the logical framework approach, and kind of the basics of evaluation. And although much of it initially went over my head, I think the importance is to have that drive and resolve to figure something out, even if you don't have the answers immediately. There are ways to getting to your answers, and I think one of those is mentorship is quite crucial in the environment, in the space. Having a mentor that can guide it, because most of the time mentors are individuals that have the foresight. They already know the pathways to a certain extent, and they can guide you to avoid certain challenges, if that's one of your ideals, if you want to avoid challenges, or if you want to learn through challenges. How do you overcome those challenges when you're faced with it? Yeah, and I think in that space, I was fortunate to also develop a capacity in evaluator thinking. So that, I think that was one of the crucial components to kind of monitoring and evaluation, is how do you think through challenges, and what questions do you ask? It's not just necessarily about asking a question, but is the question meaningful? Is it insightful? And what are you, have you already arrived at your preconceived conclusions or your preconceived findings, you know? So it's all about asking the question, but also being mindful that your assumption might be wrong, your underlying assumption might be false. And how do you learn from that, and how do you adjust your perception on things, right? And yeah, since that internship, I went on to support a number of different projects, specifically in the Office of the Commissioner for Children, on think tanks, the German Council of Foreign Relations, National Planning Commission, and etc. And I think there's a space in university, as Taku mentioned, that And for me personally, from my own experience, I think that monitoring and evaluation should be a fundamental module in social sciences. I think that from second year to third year to fourth year, that component should exist there, because sometimes you don't go on to do your postgrad at your planned time frame. There's things that happen along the way. But if you have monitoring and evaluation as a skill set, and you want to step into social sciences, or you want to step into government, or you want to step into private sector, that foundation has already been laid down. And I think it's becoming more important and crucial as M&E is becoming a standard requirement for donors. And I think it also helps develop a consciousness around accountability. Because if you're monitoring and you evaluate, there has to be some form of accountability happening there. And I think that's quite important if you work in the government space. So just to arrive at my kind of learnings and to summarize it is, I think it's important to have, number one, have a positive attitude. Always have a positive attitude, because there will always be challenges, there will always be obstacles, but how you view it and how you frame that obstacle, I think that is quite crucial. Number two, recognize your limitations, but don't use it as an excuse. Yes, you have limitations, but there's always ways to develop, to gain that skill, to actually get more education on it, or to get more practical experience if that is your interest. And I think number three is focus on personal development goals within the context of your work environment. So I think it's important as an individual always to lead your development, lead what your interests are, lead what you want to understand and what experience you want to gain. Because if you're not explicit or intentional about it, it's going to be a hit and miss. So I think there's another component of kind of personal monitoring and evaluation as well. And I think a willingness to learn. I think it's very important, because I think there's also a shift towards creating a culture of a learning environment, how organizations learn, how individuals in the organization learn, and how do you learn from failures? Because failures happen. It occurs, but how do we learn from that? What lessons do we take away from that? And how do we use that to pave the way forward? And I think my last two is producing quality work. I think your body, your evidence of work, I think that's quite important, because that what you produce at the end of the day, that is going to be your recommendation. That is what people are going to say about you. So I think it's important that you have a focus on quality. And finally, networking. I think in monitoring evaluation is a small space. More or less everyone knows everyone. So networking is quite important, and just being intentional about that. And thank you, Anna. Over to you.
Thank you, Stefan. Very, very, very interesting insights from your end. And most of them, I personally agree as well. So before we move, up next is we have, not to be confused with Mayang from World Food Programme. We also have Mayang Nube, who's going to talk about balancing soft skills and hard skills and what are his learnings so far. So Mayang, over to you.
Thank you so much. I hope I'm audible. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about balancing the soft skills and the hard skills, and basically what I've learned so far. And maybe before I can even get into that, I'll just give you some qualities that I've actually observed from other evaluators, as one has been working with them. And so I've understood evaluators to be strong negotiators, facilitators, and stakeholder managers. I've found evaluators to thrive in diversity, to be welcoming and respectful of other people's cultures, highly adaptive people, and also very professional. They have a certain degree of professionalism, which also shows pride in their work, in the manner in which they advocate for, evidence use. And they are strategic thinkers and they have an incredible work ethic. Yeah, so to contextualize maybe these qualities that I've just mentioned, I'll tell you two stories from my experience as an emerging evaluator. The one is, first, maybe I joined this program just at a point when I was just completing my postgraduate diploma in monitoring and evaluation with Wits University. So I came in very excited, to actually apply what I've learned and, the technical skills that I felt, now I'm ready. And when I came in, it dawned on me that, in practice, there's a lot more. There's a lot more than just, learning different concepts and how to apply them in practice. One of the instances was, first, my very first day at work was in Lesotho with Clear AA. So from the onset, I started work in a different environment, and we were facilitating a co-creation process there, where we're assisting in the strengthening of evaluation systems for the Lesotho government. And what dawned on me then was, the need and the importance of interpersonal skills. As an evaluator, you have to be able to, transcend different cultures and different ways of doing things, and also accept, and be respectful of differences. So that was just at the onset, that was one of the things I learned when I started in the program. The second, perhaps, experience that kind of ties this need for a balance between one's technical skills and soft skills is in the work that we do with WFP, Johannesburg Regional Bureau, where basically in managing and supporting, the management of different evaluations with different country offices in the region, you find that even within the country offices, there is basically different levels of capacity, M&E capacity. And so to that end, there is a lot of negotiation that comes in with regards to, the scope of evaluations as they come up, and maybe even negotiating with the country offices in terms of how they can be supported to conduct certain evaluations and to manage them. So in some cases, you have to find respectful ways of bringing up maybe certain aspects of an evaluation that you feel are important as part of the regional bureau, but maybe are not being raised there respectfully. So I realized that there is a lot, that goes into communication. Evaluators need to be strong communicators. They need to be effective communicators. And more than that, evaluators also need to be, advocates for inclusion and gender empowerment. So there are a lot of issues that come in. It's not just about how much one understands, how to draft evaluation questions, how much one understands data collection methods. There is a lot of stakeholder engagement, and an effective evaluator needs to be able to harness these skills and leverage them in order to ensure that they maximize stakeholder participation and the evaluations are inclusive. So these are just some of the lessons that one, is picking up along the way. And again, context is everything, because ultimately these evaluations are done, from place, from one country to another and, different environments. And so as a result of that, it's important for evaluators to be highly adaptable. It's important for evaluators to be highly adaptable and to be able to not to alienate the beneficiaries or the communities within which they work and the communities they work with. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mayang, for sharing those thoughts. So really interesting insights from our panelists. And we actually have already a couple of questions from our audience. So again, for our participants today, if you have any questions, keep them coming into the chat, and then we will ask them to our panelists. So our very first question we have from Bernard Naledzani Rasela. So Bernard knows that in some universities in South Africa as WITS, they train government evaluators when they are contracted or when the employment contract, I assume. Any relationship, so essentially Bernard is asking for any relationship that an emerging evaluator could get into, empowering each other without cost, essentially, and any scholarships that they could get into to develop their skills as evaluator. Maybe let's call Taku, maybe he could respond to this question first, and if we have any of our speakers, feel free.
Sure, thanks, Chair. Bernard, I think there can be relationships can be established. It all depends with the kind of work that you need to be done. So I think to answer your question indirectly, you would probably just send me an email and see from where are you working and how best can we work together if there are any points of synergy or interest between the two organizations. Then we can take it up from there. In terms of scholarships, universities do have scholarships, but as we work as a center and we do not offer sort of courses the way one would be awarded scholarships. So on that one, you have to check on the website. But in terms of collaboration, just drop me an email. I'll put my email address on your inbox. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Oh, thank you, Taku. And any of our speakers who would like to share, like maybe some practical tips that they could share to assist an emerging evaluator? Okay, I see my bongwe. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to say that with regards to the courses, I think as Dr. Sherau has already touched on it, for me, my experience with the postgraduate diploma at VETS was such that I went in basically not knowing exactly how I was going to fund it. But some of these opportunities also come up, like scholarships and all that, based on obviously academic performance and all that. But there are some opportunities that come along the way. And I suppose this one is to the brave, really, because I went in also not knowing exactly how one was going to fund that. But yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I agree, Maya Bongwe. For any emerging evaluators, funding for capacity building is definitely an issue, and all of us are looking for that kind of an opportunity. Anyone else from our panel who would like to share?
I just wanted to also add to just my own word to say I'm also doing a postgraduate qualification in M&E, and it is self-funded. It is difficult to find scholarships, but it really is an investment that you're making into getting into a structured M&E course. I'd also say that what helped me also was doing short courses. As I mentioned, doing a self-assessment, using that competency framework to understand where you're lacking and where you could grow and where you have already developed a level of competency can help you. So you can then take on short courses while maybe you're trying to get funding to do a structured M&E course, and then work from there if you're not brave enough yet, as Mayang said.
Thank you, Sam. Definitely short courses are the way to go, especially if you are in a place with limited opportunities to develop your skills and emerging evaluator. Any more from our panelists who would also like to share? Okay, so I mean, definitely, I would say, speaking from a perspective of an emerging evaluator, there definitely exists program. There are also a lot of programs that exists for you to take advantage of. Yes, Mayabongwe mentioned in the chat that there are IPDET courses that our colleagues could get into if that's that they usually offer scholarships as well. And it's also a good network to start with if you want to build those capacities. Our dear friend Renata have kindly informed me that it is possible for us to collect resources that we can share to our participants that they can access to see what kind of opportunities that you could use. So thank you very much, Renata, for that offer. Feel free to look forward for that in the post-event follow-up emails. So I can actually see that we have a lot of questions that are coming in, and I'm actually having a hard time following them. So forgive me if I miss them. But I do see that one of the common questions that, some of our speakers have raised this, and I can see a lot of our friends have been sharing good emails or links and tools that you could access. So thank you very much, everyone. If you know more, feel free to add them in the chat. It would be very helpful for everyone. So I think, okay, so we have 3 questions that are almost of the same, but it's essentially, so we have one that they are a fresh graduate with an interest in the emerging evaluator field or in the area. So what is the difference between working in a researcher position versus an evaluator position? I could see that that could be a confusing part. And what are the necessary skills if you are shifting into the evaluation field? Any more panelists would like to answer that?
I'm sorry, Anna, you were breaking a bit, so I didn't get the last part. Yeah, you're breaking. Sorry.
Okay. Is this better? I hope you can hear me better.
Yes.
Okay. So essentially, okay, just to repeat, the question is, what is the difference between an evaluator versus a researcher? And what are the necessary skills for you to become an evaluator? So I hope that that clarifies things for our panelists. Okay, go ahead, Mayabongwe.
Okay. So this is just my understanding. And the difference between an evaluator and a researcher, I think it's more, we understand evaluation as basically a variation of applied research. So it's focused on getting learning knowledge, assessing a policy, an intervention, and getting specific knowledge about a particular program or a particular intervention. Whereas a researcher seeks to basically add to the body of knowledge and create maybe even test out certain theoretical frameworks and understandings. So evaluators, I think it's more of applied research, but maybe colleagues can assist there, but that's the limitation of my understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayang, for sharing. Any of our panelists?
Okay, I'd like to add to what Mayang is speaking about the difference between research and evaluation. So as somebody, I think Mark in the chat, he said evaluations focus more on learnings, which is true. Evaluations focus a lot on improving existing programs. As you know, the evaluation we have the DEC criteria. We assess relevance, appropriateness, we assess the sustainability of a program. We're trying to make decisions on the program in terms of its sustainability for decision-making, next steps in trying to improve the program itself. Whereas research, mainly, as Mayang said, it looks at assessing theoretical understanding within a certain discipline. It's trying to prove a hypothesis. In evaluation, you speak more about logic models, logic frameworks, theories of change, based on a certain program and an intervention, which is, I think, is the most important differentiation between the two.
Thank you, Samu. That's a very good clear-cut definition. That's one way to look at it as well. Maybe I would also like to hear from evaluation experts, like maybe from Sir Taku or Mayang of World Food Programme. Maybe you have thoughts that you can share on this, like differentiating researcher from an evaluator.
Sure.
Yeah,
And
okay, you can go, Mayang.
yes, thank you, Taku, and thank you, Anna. Sure. I think what I wanted to mention, more or less has already been mentioned, just that, just to also mention that the rigor in terms of those processes is quite different based on what we're specifically looking at. But I also wanted to answer just one of the questions that I saw on the chat, speaking more about emerging evaluators and balancing the M&E aspects of that process. Just to mention that I've been in quite heated discussions around what it means to be emerging, and I think EvalForward should actually consider having a session to discuss that in detail, because at what point are you deemed to have emerged? What determines whether you have emerged as an evaluator or not? And I think that is something that we could potentially discuss. But coming back to the question, for the WFP Regional Bureau, of course, for us, the M, which is the monitoring, and the E is quite separate, and it's linked at country office level. That said, for the program specifically, we actually acknowledge that quite early on, and we really seek to ensure that the emerging evaluators through this process get to have that M experience as well. That said, we've been really been rigorous in terms of for the next part of our focus in terms of looking at how the emerging evaluators can use monitoring and outcome data to inform our evaluation processes. So that's something that we've looked at, and with the hope, obviously, to ensure that we more or less balance that M and the E. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayang. Taku?
Thanks, Chair. I think Samu and Mayang EE, they've summed it up. Research normally is about proving a hypothesis or proving a theory, whereas evaluation is mainly judgment-oriented to see if an intervention has really achieved the objectives that has been set. And that what makes evaluation unique is these animals cause theories of change, logical frameworks, and results frameworks, where when one does an evaluation, they need to test those against fidelity, against dosage, so that's really what distinguishes research from evaluation, despite the fact that both evaluation studies and research, they use social science kind of methods, be it your interviews, be it your questionnaires, surveys, methodologies, and so forth. So there is also a point of convergence between research and evaluation, but the uniqueness of evaluation comes when we start talking about theories of change, about logic models, and trying to test that through what they call theory-based evaluations. So that's what I can just add on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Taku. So I came in here, I thought we have enough time, but actually we are running out. So just one last question that is specifically directed to Samu. This is a question by Veronica. So when you first joined the NGO, did you apply for a specific position or did you volunteer to work there? So if you could please answer it in a minute or two. Go ahead, Samu.
Thank you. Yes, I did apply for a position. I did not volunteer. As I mentioned, I had just completed my master's degree in policy and development, and I wanted to have a job. I had been a broke student for so long in the university from undergrad. And so I was looking for a job, and I specifically knew that I wanted to work in M&E. And I wanted to contribute to monitoring and evaluation within specifically conservation agriculture. So what I did was I specifically was looking for NGOs working with smallholder farmers in climate change adaptation and conservation agriculture. So I approached the managing director of the organization and I sent her my CV, and we had a brief interview, and I joined the team to assist with monitoring and evaluation.
Thank you very much, Samu. So with that, that's going to be our last question for this session. But I will just ask for our audience, actually after this, the formal program, we will be leaving the floor open for discussion. So for those who questions are unanswered, feel free to stay to discuss more. But to officially close our program, I would like to officially call Dr. Candice Morkel. She is the director, has over 20 years of experience in government, academia, and nonprofit sector, specializing in public sector governance and monitoring and evaluation. So, Dr. Candice, over to you.
Thank you so much, Anna. And I'm absolutely loving the energy in the room. It's so thrilling to be here. And I think when we started the conversations with the Regional Bureau, WFP, and also SAMEA, I think we didn't imagine exactly how well it's going to turn out. I mean, we did have the hope that it was going to be a positive experience, and we certainly did plan it that way. But I'm still so thrilled and humbled to find how actually the EE program has developed and how EEs have just really grabbed onto the opportunity to make sure that they, get the most value out of it. And I think that is one of the learnings. I think those who've been asking questions around how do we get involved or how do we get the most value out of programs that we're involved in. I think a big part of it is to actually make sure that you take up every opportunity to learn, to throw yourself into every opportunity. I know that sometimes it might seem, and I don't want to compare this to an internship program because it's much more than that. But I think sometimes the weakness of programs, whether it is internships in other sectors, and even our YE or EE programs, which have been part of on numerous occasions, the weaknesses of those is that people who are entering into this field are not given the opportunity to get their hands dirty, so to speak, and to deep dive into the actual work. So what Mayibongwe was she talking to was one of those deep dive moments when he just joined Clear AA, when he was asked to actually facilitate a session. And I would encourage all those of you who do have those opportunities to take them up and say yes to the opportunities to get your hands dirty and to gain those skills. I think one of the biggest difficulties is that those of us who are actually the providers of evaluation capacity development opportunities need to provide more opportunities to emerging evaluators. I think that perhaps where the supply and demand weakness is in the supply of opportunities for emerging evaluators to get involved. And that is why this program is so exciting. I think the common refrain has been amongst development partners that there aren't enough evaluators. I think the solution to that is that how are we creating those opportunities to have new entrants into the field, to remove those obstacles and those barriers. And I think a large part of the responsibility does lie on our shoulders as development partners, as institutions, to actually open ourselves up to providing those opportunities. And this EE program, for example, is, I hope, a signaling to other development partners. It's our wish, our hope, our vision that other development partners will look at this program, see the success of it, and scale it up and mimic, in a sense, what it is that we've been able to accomplish here. And certainly I do hope that going forward, that this partnership will be able to be scaled up and we can open up this opportunity once this pilot is closed off, that it won't be the end of it, that certainly we will be able to take on a lot more EEs going forward. I think that is the answer to this age-old problem of why do we parachute into our developing economies external evaluators? Why can we not find local evaluators? Why is there such a huge crowding out of local evaluators out of the evaluation space? And like I said, it is a large part of the responsibility is us who are in this development space and providing ECT services to open up the spaces. Just as a kind of a few remarks on the questions that were raised. And I think there were a lot of technical questions raised around what's the difference between monitoring and evaluation? Can you be a data scientist and an M&E person at the same time? How do you enter into evaluation if you've been a researcher? And I think that those questions are, they're good questions and I think they need to be answered. But I think that you might find that there's a lot more kind of gray areas in those answers than we would wish and hope for. So for example, I was in a meeting this morning where there was a discussion around an evaluation, and all of the language was around research. What research methods are we going to be using? And so as an evaluator, you stand back and you wonder, how is it that, these things get conflated in an actual environment where, the discussion is around evaluation. So I think there's a lot more work we have to do in the space to define and distinguish evaluation and evaluative thinking as that process of the value judgment, as Takunda did mention. And so those are the kinds of areas where you might be, as an emerging evaluator or new entrant, hoping that there are clear-cut black and white answers to these questions, but many times they are not. Sometimes, staff members in organizations carry both a research and an M&E role. I know of somebody who carries a data scientist role and an M&E role. And so these things are not quite clear-cut. So I think that it's, as you enter into the field, you'll see in practical experience how to distinguish some of these things. But I think the answers that have been provided have been very good. As a final word, I think I would like to thank our partners. As I said, it's really thrilling to see what kind of impact this has had. Of course, we haven't applied any kind of evaluation to it, but certainly I do think we have to look at how do we evaluate the success. Because anecdotally right now, we of course are seeing that it is, providing some of the solutions that we wanted them to provide. It would be remiss of me not to mention Grace Ikweta by name. Of course, she's now based in Rome, but, just to thank her as well, because those are some of the first initial exciting conversation that we had about this. But in the entire WFP team, SAMEA, our partners at UNICEF, I have to say that we are really grateful that you took the leap to start this kind of program. And I really hope, as I said earlier on, that is a signal to other partners to mimic and do even better than what we have been doing. And I certainly hope that we will be able to take this program going forward. Thank you so much. Thanks, Annie. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Candice. And definitely World Food Programme and Claire is doing a great job, be honest, and really advancing emerging evaluators in the field. So with that, our program is officially closed. I know a lot of you are staying. So again, as we have mentioned, we are now opening the floor for more thoughts and discussions from our panelists and audience as well. Again, if you have more questions, feel free to share them. So yeah, how should we go about this now that we are feel free for all, essentially?
Thanks, Erika. I just want to remind our audience, first of all, thank you all for staying and being so active and engaged. I also want to remind that we recorded this session. We will share the recording, and also we will gather some resources and links of training programs and resources that can help emerging evaluators. I also noted the comment by Mai Bonge of WFP, inviting EvalForward to do something on emerging evaluators. What do we define as emerging evaluators? What is this notion, and how we can support emerging evaluators of all types? So point well taken. Just thank you all again, and invite you to follow EvalForward for next initiatives on this and other evaluation related topics. So if you want to stay, we have no agenda for this part. So it's just like if you have the pleasure to stay, network, or ask questions, as far as we are here for a few more minutes, and so I welcome you to come forward. Thank you all, and thank you to all our partners, WFP, Clear, SAMEA in the background also. Thank you all.